Welcome back to the Health Exchange. I'm Dr. J. Rutland, and today's going to be a little different. Our very special guest host is my better half, Dorey Rutland, and we're talking about what it is like to be married to a doctor, specifically me. I'm sure I'm about to learn a lot with the help of our guest, Nicole Johnson-Nguyen, licensed clinical psychologist who will help guide this conversation. Together, we'll discuss the challenges, the rewards, and the strategies that help couples in medicine build strong, lasting relationships. This is the Health Exchange. So, Dr. Johnson-Nguyen, you are a clinical psychologist, but tell me what your day-to-day is like.
So I have a private practice in Long Beach, and I see individuals, I see couples, and sometimes families. So right now I'm actually seeing a lot more men and a lot more couples in my practice than I usually do. I actually never really wanted to work with couples initially, and it's become my favorite thing. It's something I absolutely enjoy.
Now I'm just going to ask you the direct question. Was there a reason why you didn't want to work with couples specifically, or?
I was just worried that it would be really challenging and that one partner, stereotypically probably the male partner, would not want to be invested or involved, and that it would be a lot of back and forth or feeling like I was siding with one or the other. And it's actually not been my experience at all. And both parties have been very invested in the therapy. Both parties have really felt like there was room for growth and change and really wanted to see that happen because their relationship was important to them. And it totally changed my mind about the whole experience.
So when you think about psychologists, right? And again, psychologists are doctors as well. A lot of times people get confused between psychologists and psychiatrists. What's the difference between the two?
So psychiatrists go to medical school and they can prescribe medication. Here in California, psychologists are not allowed to prescribe medication. We do talking therapy. A lot of psychiatrists are trained in doing traditional talking therapy, but most are not. So they see a psychologist to actually do what we consider traditional therapy, the talk therapy. If you need a medication evaluation or your prescription refilled, you would go to your psychiatrist.
You know, we have never done any kind of couples therapy. I've done stuff on my own. I think my first experience with a psychologist, I went with my mom in like 8th grade. We were just really butting heads, and I can't tell you how much it improved our relationship. It was huge. And then I go to one on my own now, and it's been very helpful. I'm curious, when you deal with couples, how do you stay neutral? How do you not how can you not pick a side?
It's a very, very good question. And I think it's something that a lot of my couples are fearful of. And that's why it's unethical for me to see any party of the couple individually. So I may have a patient that I'm seeing individually now, and they may say, oh my gosh, I would love for you to be our couples therapist. And I said, well, you have to choose one or the other. But if I'm already invested in seeing them, it's like more than one session, then I can't see them as a couple because I already have that bias, because I already have a relationship established with one. So it wouldn't be fair to the other one. So I can see them occasionally, as a couple, but they really need to get their own therapist. So it's not as hard as you would think to not pick sides, because I tell my patients when they first come in, it's not my job to judge your situation, but I will be honest about what my perception of the situation is, what I see. And so if I happen to see one person is quote unquote right, I will say, try to help the other party see their perspective.
Got it.
But it is my job to keep an open mind as much as possible. And so even if I have an opinion, like, oh my gosh, like she is so right. I have to kind of like.
She said she.
Or he. I have to like take that step back and like really try to reframe it and try to get the other person to kind of see both sides. Because I don't want them to feel like I'm taking one side or the other. And I've had couples come to me that because their other therapist they felt was aligned more with the other, and they really felt that. And I felt that that therapist or psychologist did them a disservice, because my patients should never feel like I'm on one side over the other. I want them to know I'm team both of them. My job is to strengthen their relationship as a couple, not to pick sides.
So if Jamie and I showed up, we're sitting on your couch, what is like one of the first things you would ask us?
So I actually like couples to tell me their love story. I do like to know how they met. One is because it helps me to get to know them, but it also reminds them why they fell in love and the good times. And so it's a good reference point to kind of start of like, hey, let's start from the beginning. How did you meet? How did you fall in love? And then it kind of leads to where they are now.
You want to tell a story? Or you want to
Do you need a salt and pepper shaker? Usually you need props for this one.
That's true. I usually do need props. She's right. No, and there's a reason why I say you need props. This is why you need props. So I'm a second year medical student, and we are out. I went to University of Iowa in Iowa City, Iowa, the greatest place on earth. Anyway, so I'm in. It's like a January chilly winter night, and my buddy, my best friend in medical school named Jimmy, is at this place of business called Brothers, which is a bar and grill. This bar and grill in Iowa City at the time, and it's probably still that way, if you were 18 and over, you could get into this bar and grill, and this bar and grill did not card people who were 18 and over. It's Iowa.
I also would not call it a grill. Just take the grill off. Just a bar.
Well, maybe that's how it was in Kansas, but in Iowa City, it was a grill. So I walk into this bar, and I'm looking for Jimmy, and I look to my left, and I see Jimmy dancing, and Jimmy's on the dance floor dancing in between two women. There's a woman behind him, and there's a woman in front of him. And so I go up to Jimmy. I'm like, Jimmy, we need to leave. I don't want to be here. Everybody here is young. We're like 25, right? I'm like, everybody here is young. Like, this is the young bar. You know this place. Like, we got to go. We just go to Atlas down the street. And Jimmy's like dancing. He looks at me, and he's like, he's like, so as I'm about to turn around, somebody grabs my hand. And it was Dorey. And she said, I'm Dorey. And then we started talking. We started dancing. And then that kind of started the relationship. Now, I don't know if she remembers at the time, but I don't think I told her I was in medical school. I think I told her I was a lobbyist for waste management.
I also didn't care. I came up like on a whim with my best friend. We were visiting her cousin in college. I went to University of Kansas. I grew up in Kansas. So we were just there for a weekend. I had no intention of ever seeing this guy again.
Then we spent the next day together too. And we spent the rest of the weekend together. And that kind of started the long distance 4.5 hour relationship. And we actually felt it was a very healthy start because we never labeled anything. I never asked her what she was doing in Kansas. She never asked me what I was doing in Iowa.
There was zero pressure. It was just fun.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I could come up, I could come up. If I couldn't, it was what it was. Like, we were both doing our own things. I had my first job. He was doing his thing. So it was really like casual.
Except that weekend we went away to Vegas like within a month.
But that was like 2 weeks after we met.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks after we met. And I totally
pretty
stole from her because we just stayed in her hotel room, me and my buddies. And we went to Vegas for that weekend. But the thing that was established kind of early on was like, I couldn't drive down to Kansas City because that was 9 hours of study time, which was significant for me at the time, right? Because it's like second year of medical school. It's that, you're about to take your first set of boards and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of knew that. So she was the one that would drive up pretty much 100% of the time that first.
Yeah, 100% of the time.
The first couple of years. And then after about 1.5 years or so, we were kind of like, listen, you got to move in or we got to be done. Like, right, because it was getting too difficult. So she moved in. And then we had another discussion about like career and stuff. And I was just kind of like, and I'm not saying I, even though it sounds like it's just like, I felt like I always had a little bit of a foresight and I knew how I felt about medicine and I knew I kind of had a plan for what I wanted to do, and that required a lot of studying and a lot of independent time to myself to develop it. So we had that conversation earlier, and I just said, hey, like, listen, like, I do want to have a family. wife, kids, all that stuff. But medicine's a priority. Do you remember this conversation?
Oh no, we definitely talked about all of that. I think as like a young woman, like just entering my career, it's like I don't know that I really processed what that meant for me. You know what I mean? I was always just like go with the flow anyway. So I'm like, yeah, let's just have fun. Everything's great. But no, I mean, he did. To his credit, he's always known what he's wanted to do. He's always been very committed, and he's always been great at it. So,
Then?
there's no then.
Right. No, then you start your career. And we were talking a little bit about this earlier, right? So in medical school, you go through medical school, studying all the time. 4th year of medical school is kind of like a dream because like you really don't have to do anything from like February until July. Like you're kind of just chilling. You've done your residency interviews, you know where you're going to go, all that kind of stuff. And even now it's even earlier, but whatever. So you're chilling those few months, and then internship and residency start. And that's when like your time is all in the
things
hospital.
shift.
Everything
And they definitely
shifts.
shifted.
And I've actually never had the opportunity to ask my wife, did you feel that shift?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know that I really acknowledge it. I just kind of, you just kind of go. And I feel like things go so fast. I like to describe Jamie, and this might give you some perspective. And hopefully this doesn't sound terrible, but sometimes I feel like this like puppy chasing after a car, and I'm like, just slow down, like, because he's just always like, he is such a high achiever, and he always has these like great ideas. So he is just go, go, go. And I'm back here trying to pick up all the things and like, like keep up with him. So it just was like, started his career. It was super intense. I was still working. We had our first kid, and it was like just pure madness. Like he was getting calls all night long. He was like a fellow, also moonlighting. I was working. I was trying to even go on like business trips, and my mom would watch, our daughter, and it was too much for her. And I just remember one day I sent him a text, and I just said, I quit and went shopping.
Oh, no. This was the text. Wait, first of all, I'm so happy that you described me from one of like the famous quotes from a Batman movie, which is like, I'm like a dog chasing cars. I wouldn't know what to do if I caught one. Like, I just do things.
I actually don't know what I would do if I caught you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We would be bored.
That's true. But it was first year of pulmonary critical care fellowship, and I was crazy, right? So like my 3rd year of residency, I started moonlighting a lot, right? I started like going away for the weekend and like taking care of people and just getting paid for it, like trying to like, I invested in a $260,000 degree. I wanted some return, right? Like, it's fine. But first year of fellowship, I'm like, I'm pulling into like the driveway at home at our house or our condo in North Kansas City. And I get this text, and it says, I quit my job and I went shopping. Sorry. Period.
She said sorry.
Right. That was the text I got, right? And like, I remember looking at this thing because for probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, like she was like the breadwinner. Like she was like bringing home bacon that was like significant in terms of what we did with our life. And I remember reading this text message, and I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to make up that salary?
Yeah.
And I knew how much I was working at the time. And I was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And then like, she's like, I'm just like running, like trying to figure it out. Right.
I'd like to say that we actually discussed it like a little bit at least, or it was like a casual conversation.
Wasn't completely out of left field.
It wasn't completely out of left field, but like maybe like not so centered.
Yeah.
Either way, just one of those.
Yeah. So I think like then, like, and what you can tell, and you can probably feel this, is like we were communicating pretty well, right? 2nd year fellowship, fine. Third year fellowship, easy, breeze. I was moonlighting all the time, but it was fine. Second kid, third year fellowship.
We moved here. The girls were 2.5 and 4 months.
Oh, wow.
So they were little, and we had nobody here.
Nobody was here at that time. So in Kansas, when we were in Kansas, her parents were there. So we had like,
You had a support system.
oh, 100%.
And all my friends that I grew up with.
All her friends grew up, her parents, whatever. Then we moved to California, and we had, because she wanted to be in Southern California. I wanted to go to Northern California. I was like, we can go to San Francisco. My mom's there. Like, it'd be cool. Like, whatever. She was like, no.
I really wanted to start somewhere where it was just us. Like, I wanted to try, like, to establish something on our own.
Yeah.
You know, like have our own little, like, nuclear family. And it sounded so fun to me.
It's true. And then we moved here. And then the whole grind started again. Now, same question. Like, when I started working for Elbert Shaw, remember that week when I went to work on Monday and I didn't come home until Friday?
I mean, there were a lot of those.
Yeah. There was a week I remember on call in the ICU, like the night guy couldn't come or something for like 3 or 4 nights in a row. And I was just like, whatever, I'll just stay. And so I like lived in the hospital for like a week, from like Monday to Friday. And honestly, it was like nothing. Like it was nothing to me where there was no, when I got home, it wasn't like, where the hell were you? You know, it was like, this is what you do. This is your job, like blah, blah, blah.
But how was that for you?
Oh, it was hard. I mean, I don't think I like complained to him so much, but his boss's wife, she was like my BFF real fast. And she was older than me and just kind of like took me under her wing a little. And, you know, I just remember one day there were just Cheerios everywhere and I'm just like crying. She's like, it's okay. This is normal. And I'm like, you know, it's just like, sometimes when you have like you're a mom of like really little kids, you're like you're doing a lot of like what you feel like is nothing. Like it's just all these like things, but you also feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. Like I was making money and doing things with my brain, and like now I'm cleaning up Cheerios. Like, you know, if it's not Cheerios, it's something else. Like, so I don't know. I kind of lost my purpose a little bit, and I think that's where things get a little complicated and how we've structured our relationship, I guess.
Yeah, when you go back and you think about that, I mean, I don't think that like the Irvine time when we were in the house there, like I hear my absence. I feel that like thinking about it and looking at it now, I feel the absence part, but I don't think I was absent. I think I was still.
No, I mean, I don't think you've ever been absent. Like anytime you're away, you could be out of the country and it doesn't feel like you're absent. You know, we're always FaceTiming. We're always talking. You're always like still involved in decision making, all that kind of stuff. Like that's never been a thing. I think for me, a big part of like kind of I like to say, you know, Jamie is just super outgoing. He's, you know, the main act on stage, like making things happen, doing all this stuff, and I'm behind the scenes. And sometimes when you're behind the scenes, you feel, I don't know, maybe not acknowledged. Not that I don't think you not acknowledged me. This is my own how I see myself, I guess. And then we had the whole like, I think one of the bigger things for me has just been like the gender role dynamic. When you quit your job, become a stay-at-home mom, like you kind of like have this, and part of me is like, okay, these are not rules. Like I'm going to take out the trash because it needs to be done. You're going to do the dishes because they need to be done. Like, you know, we're going to just be a team. This isn't about rules. So we've kind of had those conversations where it's like, we're not labeling roles. We're
up to this point, when you're hearing this kind of a story, is that story a healthy story? Or is it like, oh, I see trouble coming?
No, I think it's healthy because I hear communication. And I think communication is the foundation of any successful relationship. I feel like if you have communication, you can pretty much get through anything. And I have couples and, you know, other things are going on, but I'm like, if you have that solid kind of communication foundation, you know, you might just need a little fine tuning here and there. But if you are communicating, because I feel like that's the worst thing that can happen to a couple is when they stop talking to each other. And I feel like there's never too much communication. I feel like you cannot over communicate with your partner. And so pretty much everything you've said, there was a layer of communication that was happening. And so as long as you keep that up, that's what's going to sustain you, is being able to talk to each other about the mundane day-to-day stuff, but also the harder stuff and having those harder conversations. Because at some point, couples stop talking to each other, and that's when it becomes hard. It becomes hard to talk about hard things when you can't even talk about the smaller day-to-day things.
So the day we moved into our new house.
So moving up to this new house, right? Like he's busting his ass, like trying to live in Orange County, California. That is not an easy thing, right? So we move out of our rental, we move into a sublease, move out of the sublease.
No, wait. Moved in with our friends for 2 weeks, which was the dumbest decision.
Okay, don't ever do that.
Never move in with your friends.
We won't go into detail, but don't ever do it.
Do not do that. We don't need to go into detail. Just don't do it. Right?
We may or may not talk to them anymore.
Right.
Anyway, so moved in with our friends, and then moved into a sublease, and then moved into a hotel,
A long-term hotel.
with 2 kids and a dog. And
The best dog ever.
we were there for a month. And then we move into our house finally. We get the keys the day before Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
And we always have Thanksgiving at our house.
So his whole family.
My whole family's coming for Thanksgiving. Right.
So
Didn't change it.
We did not change it.
No.
That sounds fun. This is going to
The
be fun.
day we move into our house.
And his mom is like anti-paper plates, by the way. So this was the one year she allowed paper plates.
This is the thing that comes up, anti-paper plates. Right.
That's your mom.
So the day we move into our house, I'm leaving the ICU, right? Because my family's there helping move in and all that kind of stuff. I get a phone call from my brother. My older brother's like, hey. And I was like, what's up? He's like, did you hear anything? And I was like, did I hear what? He's like, you didn't hear what happened? And I was like, what happened? And he said, Dorey's dad died.
Oh, no.
The day we move into our new house.
The day before Thanksgiving.
The day before Thanksgiving. So I get home, right? I'm like, now I'm speeding. Like, I'm good. I get home and I'm like, oh, right. And my wife is on the floor, kind of in the room, like cuddled up in a corner. Everybody's downstairs because my family was there at the time. And I feel like that day was like such a monumental external, and I don't want to say stress because it's not a stress, a monumental external. It was like in a yeah, it is event that just had a significant impact into how everything went from that point on.
Well, and like obviously the loss is like huge, but like one of the hard parts for me too was like we didn't get to celebrate like what he's worked so hard for. You know what I mean? And it was just like, it kind of was like, let's move and try again, you know? Because it was like, we just like worked so hard for this, and it was like totally
a dud. It was just like a,
yeah.
And that's when kind of honestly, like honest, and this is like honest to God thing, the communication right then got scarred. And the reason I think, and you can help us see this, I know we're not having a therapy session, but we kind of are. I think the reason it got scarred was that I deal with death every single day of my life. I see people die. I see family members hysterical. I see family members understanding. I see family members who want to have discussions about all the emotions around it. And so for me, death is a normal process. And because we're in the ICU, like, and I'm in the ICU taking care of people, it's hard for me to be emotional because I got to take care of the person in the next room that's also dying. And so like and for her, you know, it was her father and it was a huge loss because when her mom and dad split, she went with her dad. Like her dad was like her person. And I, at the time, this is the first time where I had to be like honestly, like, I mean, I've had to kind of be doctor and husband with all the experiences we had throughout whatever, But I guess this is really the first time where it got to where I had to be like pulmonary critical care doctor and husband, and I did not know how to deal with that. Like I couldn't. Like I dealt with it as I always deal with it in the ICU, which was like, are you good? Like this is the natural process. We got to move to the next, we got to move to the next step, figure out how we're going to handle, what needs to be handled in terms of the business of his life. Like we got to do this, like we got to move. That's how I did it. And that like led to her like communication was.
Yeah, I think, I can understand how that's so hard for him because he does have to like deal with that. And I've seen, certain patients that like he's gotten close to or I've come to know and they've passed away and it's been difficult. And so in that situation, I just felt like, he was very used to, a little desensitized. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Like he was very used to like the way that he handled those patients, which he was with for several days. But then it's like you come home and you're with me for several months. Like, you see me 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to deal with me 24 hours a day. You have to deal with my whatever it is.
Yeah, you're great.
And the last thing I want to hear is death is a part of life. It just really was a trigger.
Yeah.
And I'm stubborn. I was just like, it's part of life. This happens every day. I had 5 patients die last night. I had 4 patients die the night before that.
Yeah.
And this is something we still like, we probably could tell. We still talk about this, right? That time. And it's like, my question to you is this. Do you go back, rethink, think about how you can do it better? Do you move on? Like, how do you address that monumental event? And there's a couple more, but how do you address that part?
Well, I always say we can't go back, right? We don't have a time machine, so we can't go back into the past. So what I always say is, what can you take from that experience from the past to apply it to situations moving forward, right? Acknowledge any missteps or things that you might have done differently if you could, because when we know better, we do better. And sometimes we aren't able to really be who our partner needs us to be in that moment. And you were compartmentalizing. That's how you have to do what you have to do to survive your day, right? You can't get emotional every time something happens because you wouldn't be able to move on to the next patient, right? It's the same with me. Like, I can't take everything that, happens in one session. I can't carry it over to the next one. I have that 10-minute break to transition. And what happened, though, was you were compartmentalizing so much and using the skills that you used to make yourself an amazing physician, but it wasn't what she needed to make you an amazing partner and to be there for her in terms of what she was going through with her grief. And again, you understand why he was doing what he was doing, but your dad doesn't die every day. It was that one time where it happened, and it was, just wanting to hear, something other than death's a part of life, because yes, it is, but you only have one dad, and so I think it's hard.
Yeah.
I see both sides.
Both sides. Yeah.
I see both sides. I see why you had to do what you had to do, and I see what you needed and were craving and wanting as you were going through your grief. Because there's no timeline on grief. And, I lost my dad almost 20 years ago, and I still feel that loss. I feel like it's something you never really get over.
Yeah.
And I think that's okay. And so I tell my patients that, you grieve in your way for however long you need to. And you just communicate to your partner and to who's around you what you actually need from them. And hopefully, you get that, because you're going to feel that loss for the rest of your life.
Now it's time for What's the Buzz, presented by BuzzRx. Every week I answer a health-related question from one of our viewers. This week's question: what exactly does Viagra do in the body, and how does it help with erectile dysfunction? Well, an erection happens because of a psychological stimulation, which leads to release of nitric oxide, which allows the arteries to vasodilate. You get more blood into the penis, and as you get more blood into the penis, that actually compresses the veins, so you get less blood leaving the penis. That's what an erection actually is. But this is all as a result of nitric oxide and the production of cyclic GMP. What Viagra does is it actually allows for cyclic GMP to be around a lot longer so you can maintain that erection. That's the buzz. If you have a question, please email us at healthexchangepodcast.com. Again, I want to thank BuzzRx for their sponsorship in this segment. Thanks again. Look up your medications on buzzrx.com or the app to see how much you can save. So about 2 years later, the pandemic starts.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Pandemic starts, and for me, like, when the pandemic started, it was awful, understood, but it was also like, and I'm gonna be real, it's probably one of the best times of my life, and I'm gonna tell you why. Pandemic started, my brother, his wife, and kid were in New York. They came to California. They lived there. They came to California to watch my cousin perform in a play. My grandmother wrote over 40 books. Her name's Eva Rutland, and one of her books got turned into a play. And the play was called No Crystal Stair. It was kind of loosely based on our family, but my cousin, who's an actress, got to play my grandmother in this play. So everybody came, and my brother came. And it was right when Trump announced the pandemic was starting, all this kind of stuff, and just declared it a pandemic. And I told my brother, I said, listen, I was like, you probably want to get your stuff, come to my house. Like, you're not gonna be able to get back to New York because the airports are starting to shut down. He's like, no, we'll be fine. So anyway, hour later, he's like, hey, can we come stay with you for, a few days until this pandemic thing blows over? And I was like, sure.
2 weeks max.
Yeah,
2 weeks max.
exactly, right? I was like, sure. So he comes. And then about 3 weeks into it, my mom is like, well, I'm in San Francisco. What the hell am I doing? So she comes. So now we've gone from having nobody, no family support system. We had friends, to having our entire family in our house, which was not a stress. It was probably like,
No, I actually really loved it.
it was awesome. We made dinner every night. I was working like 20 nights a month in addition to like my clinic and stuff. It was busy. And I had left the practice I was in and started my own thing. So anyways, so that's going on. It was the best part of our life. My brother and his wife were there for like 4 months. My mom was there. And then everybody decided to move to California.
Oh, wow.
But during the pandemic, her best friend, the one that was dancing behind Jimmy that day when I met her, had a huge brainstem stroke and is locked in. So she's essentially not here.
Yeah.
She's in a bed and can't do anything neurologically. That was another event, another huge event. And also that same year, she got diagnosed with breast cancer, had surgery, came back, had another surgery, radiation, all of that. So
There's a lot that happened in a very little time.
Yeah.
And in the middle of all of that, he quit his job, started a practice, and we started building that practice.
started all this, really.
Yeah. And then the consulting stuff started building. So we were building a business. And I say we because, like, I'm a stay-at-home mom, but I mean, I was the receptionist. I was the MA. I know how to do pulmonary function tests. Like, I can do a lot of stuff now. But, it's all hands on deck. So there was a lot on our plate.
There was a lot on our plate. And there was one day, I remember this. Do you remember the day when we saw the lady with scleroderma lung? Scleroderma is an autoimmune lung condition. And you and Des were there.
Yep.
And the lady sees her last name's Rutland. And she's like, you're his wife? And she's like, yeah. And then she's like, but he's black. And you're white. Why'd you marry him?
Well, she also went in and said, where did he get the money to start this practice? And then she goes, and where did he learn to talk so good? I'm like, it's but
Yeah. It was, I mean, that was like, I was like.
And you know what? We had like 5 patients and we were like, bye,
Yeah.
we're not, we're just not.
So all of that.
We don't need it.
Yeah, that was great. So all of this was all happening like with all the other stuff happening like simultaneously. And so you get so busy. The kids are getting older. They got soccer, they got this, they got that, they got school, they got all kinds of activities. I got this and that and trying to build this and trying to go film this and trying to go build that. And then I think we just kind of stops talking and relating with one another. And then now it's like we're both like really busy. The kids are really busy with school, really busy with doctoring and consulting and flying everywhere and doing media and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, what do you do? Like, how do you, like, there's a part of me that wishes that I could go back to 2017 or 18 and just like restart. But how do you do that? Like, you can't go back, obviously, but how do you restart emotionally through a very busy life with lots of social and family dynamics?
Well, it's interesting you say the emotional part too, because definitely answer this. Like, I think of him in the ICU and he has to turn it off, right? It's like we're so busy, we don't have time to to get emotional. Like, we don't have time for that. Like, let's just move on and like, you know what I mean? So I think sometimes it's like just bury it and whatever. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I don't want you to have to bury it. And I think that's so hard. I hear that a lot from, couples where they feel like one partner has such a stressful, job. And so they don't want to burden that person with any of the day to day, even if it's something that happened that, upset them, they'll just, oh, it's okay. He had a harder day, than me dealing with the kids or with anything. But then I worry about that partner of like, who's holding emotional space for you? Like who's helping you carry that mental load and that emotional load? You should be able to share the little small things that happen day to day and not feel like you have to bury them. And some of them, I'm guessing you want to know. You want to know if she's having a bad day or something. But it is hard because I think a thing will happen where you start to, well, my little thing obviously isn't going to compare to him having 2 patients die today, And so then you're like, it's not that big of a deal. I'll just deal with it or I'll just bury it. So I think it's having a conversation as a couple of, can we carve out some time where we can talk about these things and, we can connect again on a more emotional level.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not going to be right when he gets home from work. Maybe it's, sometime after the kids go to bed or after you've had time to decompress from your day and you've had time to decompress from your day. Every couple it's different. So I never like to say at the end of the day, because for some couples it's in the morning, after the kids go off to school. For some couples it's during lunch. For some, it is at night. So finding a time that would work for both of you to then be able to connect. And maybe you're keeping a little kind of list of things that you just want to share with him. And when you get that opportunity, you have that moment to share and be each other's partner, because yes, he's a doctor, but he's also your husband and she's also your wife and you're the mother of his children and you're the father. And so like, there's all these roles that you wear, but they're all equally important. So they all should get equal time.
One of the hardest things I ever had to do in our relationship was when she got diagnosed with breast cancer. We'd gone to Big Bear for the weekend. She got a biopsy. We'd gone to Big Bear for the weekend with our like best friends and my brother and his wife. It was an awesome weekend. Came home Sunday night and she was like, hey, why don't you check my results and see what the results of the biopsy were. So I'd log in, I'd look at the results. And I was like, oh, and like right then and there, like I'm like doctor, husband, father, because I got 2 girls, right? So, and then I have to deliver this news to her. And like, this was probably one of the first times like I cried and like broke down and was like, oh my God, like, like my producers always want me to like get emotional and cry, right? But it's hard for me to do it. But like that day, it was like, whoo, like it was crazy because I was like, well, it's breast cancer, boo, like it's just like, that was a day. But when you say like everything gets that equal time, that is interesting because I don't give everything equal time. Like at home, I just try to be like dad and husband. Like that's it. Like my drive home is like my like throw it out the window like time. Like, all right, out of the window. Yep. 40-year-old lady died, has a 6-year-old daughter. Throw it out of the window. Like you gotta get home. Like you gotta like whatever and be present, with your family.
Which I agree with, and I do recommend that, but I also think you being a doctor is also an important part of your family and your relationship, and so if you did have a particularly difficult day, I think she would wanna know about that and to share that with you, and so again, it's maybe not as soon as you come home because you wanna be dad and be on for your kids, but I think that, you being able to have that safe space to be able to process through what you're feeling is going to help both of you feel vulnerable and be able to get emotional and connect. And emotional doesn't just mean crying, but just being able to allow those kind of guards down a little bit and be able to be there for each other.
Okay, going a little like lighter. One thing that I feel like we've not necessarily struggled with, but something I've had to learn is like where to put boundaries.
Mm.
So like one example, this was super early on in our relationship. I don't even know if you remember it, but I think he was like a fourth year med student, like really didn't know that much yet. No offense. Not enough to do what I'm about to tell you. But I think I had like a UTI.
Mm.
And I was like, I think I have a UTI, and I'm like, I need to go to the doctor. And he's like, well, I'm a doctor. I'm like, no, you're not. You're not my doctor. And he's like, just I can give you an exam. I'm like, absolutely not. No, 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 no. So, it's like I have my own doctors. I choose my own doctors. No.
I was like a third-year resident.
I don't know what you
I
were.
remember this story.
There is no amount of training that you could tell me in that regard. That's just one of those things. It's like, I love you. I support you. I, am really proud of all the things you've accomplished, but no, it's hard no. So I don't know. So boundaries. I don't know. How do we establish like, you're my husband.
Mm-hmm.
You're not my doctor, like, but I respect you and I respect your advice and opinions.
Yeah, boundaries are super important in relationships. I think everyone needs to know what their boundaries are, like your kind of your hard nose. That was obviously one for you. And being able to clearly communicate that to your partner is really important. And yes, I appreciate that you may be able to diagnose this in someone else, but it's just not something I feel comfortable with, or want you doing. um, but I think that, just again, it's all, and it's just, I say it all the time, it's just communication of just communicating whatever it is that you need or want from your partner and being able to say, thank you, but no. Like, yes, in this moment, I want you to be my husband. I want you just to support me and to say, wow, that must be really uncomfortable for you. And I can, recommend some things, but definitely make an appointment with your doctor if that's what you feel comfortable doing. And then, so you're switching your hats a lot, just like you switch hats from mom and, wife and, and so you just have to take that doctor hat off and just put your husband hat on and just say, okay, bite your tongue, because even if you felt comfortable diagnosing it, it wasn't something she felt comfortable with you doing. And that's okay.
How do you feel about that?
First of all, I was a doctor. I was not a med student when you asked me that question. I
That would
respect
have been a
it.
good referral. Just kidding.
I respect it. I respect it. My perspective is, do you know how many people text me every single day asking for an antibiotic for a urinary tract infection. Like, it is so like second nature. I'm like, here, like, whatever, like, I got it. And so it just becomes like, when my wife doesn't ask me, then I'm like, well, how am I? Like, like, hello, like, you're sitting there, you're gonna wait 3.5 weeks to go see somebody, but you sleep next to me. Like, I mean, I'm not that offended, but like, you know, if you really want to know how I feel, that's how I feel.
I mean, would it be different now? Versus was it because he wasn't like where he is now in terms of like, his career or was it just that particular issue?
Yeah. What was it?
I'm pretty sure you wanted to like give me an exam. Okay. I think it was really intrusive.
I mean, like, I always want to
I
give you an
mean,
exam.
that is not what I needed in that moment. I needed an antibiotic. I needed a doctor.
I got the medicine. I'm playing. I'm kidding.
It was a very skewed, like, the boundaries were very gray.
What's the hardest part now?
Oh, parenting.
Oh.
Parenting with an extreme achiever is, I don't even know the words for it, just difficult. It's hard. It's hard because I am very, like, I'm very I'm heavier on the mental health side. Like, that really is like, where we're moms. Like, I want to make sure they're okay. I don't want to coddle them. I don't want to make them happy all the time, but I don't want to like, go overboard. So,
And I'm like opposite because I'm like, my mom's a single mom, right? And had 2 boys. So I was raised completely different. So like, there was this one time I got in trouble and my mom, and I called the cops on my mom. I was like, I'm calling the cops. My mom was like, call them. So I called the cops. Cops knock on the door. And they said, Mrs. Rutland, are you hitting your son? And my mom said, yes. And when you leave, I'm going to hit him again. And the cops left. Right. And I never felt like so alone in my life. And so like, I am like hardcore, like, I sound like this, but like, I'm not screaming and yelling all the time. But it's the first time you ever told me, you called me an extreme high achiever. But as an extreme high achieving parent, I guess, or whatever the hell I am, when I hear my children being disrespectful towards their mom for a certain amount of time, like, I get like angry. It's like Black Panther and how he like gets that energy from when he's like fighting. It like gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, it's the same thing. It's like when they're like doing the thing, and so like I will be like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot do this. She's a little softer, but will like wait, and then she'll explode maybe like after a month or something. We're parenting the other day. What was it? What we were in the kitchen, and Amelia and Scarlett did something, and I was like parenting, and then she decided to parent as well, but have a different opinion of the way that I was parenting.
So it wasn't about his parenting. It was the timing. So, okay, so this is another thing because I've taken on 99% of like the parental load, like for a lot of our relationship. I have a really hard time, and I can admit that. I have a really hard time stepping back. Like, I went out with my girlfriends on Saturday and I was still trying to plan their stuff. And he's like, I'm here, I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it's just like, I just organize everything. So he comes home, I don't know, he picked them up. He's got our little one going to this like extra soccer practice.
Which one was it?
She'd already made a team. He wanted her to go to this even higher team. And I'm like, okay, I'm on board. Everybody's on board. We had 30 minutes between school and time to leave, right? So like, I had already made some food. She comes home and she grabs like a cookie, and it sets you off, and then she talks back, and then he sends her to her room. And I'm like, I did overstep because in my head, my anxiety is rising, and I'm like, we have 30 minutes to eat and get the heck out of here. And also, like, now she's in this, like, she doesn't want to go anyway. And now she's in this, like, tizzy, you know, and all upset. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, just let her calm down so she can go do a good job at this practice. That's just where we differ.
She bawled, by the way. Like, she
She
did very
She
well.
did great.
Like, it actually wasn't about the cookie per se, more than it was about the behavior. And the behavior was, I don't have to ask mom. I don't have to ask dad. I'm going to go there and grab the cookie. And she grabs the cookie, and I said, put it back. She said, well, mom lets me. And I said, put the cookie back. She's like, well, mom lets me do this all the time. And then so I'm like, hey, Dorey, do you let her do this? And then, of course, she's like, yeah, I let her do it all the time. She can have the cookie.
Well,
I was like, oh.
In my defense, they were Girl Scout cookies. That happens once a year. Like, I don't even keep cookies in the house.
Yeah, no, but I mean, this is a common thing that happens with couples, right? Especially when there's a primary parent who takes on the majority of the parental day-to-day, right? But what I heard was also kind of maybe you feeling a little undermined or disrespected when she said, well, mom lets me do it. But you're like, yeah, but I'm dad and I'm saying, no, put it back. So that should have been the end of it, whether mom lets you or not, because I'm your parent too. And I'm asking you to do something. So I think that might have been what triggered you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and it wasn't, like you said, about the cookie.
No.
It was about her response to you and kind of like, well, mom lets me. And you're like, but I'm dad and I'm here. And then not feeling supported when you're asking for backup. And so what I always ask, or what I always caution,
not feeling supported when you ask for backup.
what I recommend couples do is, if you know, to always try to have each other's back in front of your kids, because your kids are smart and they will learn to divide and conquer. And especially when one parent isn't there as much, they will learn how to play each other against each other. And so even if you're like, yeah, I do always give her a cookie, in that moment, say, you know what? But your dad is asking you to put it back. So you don't even really have to answer. You're just saying, hey, your dad's asking you to put it back. And then later on, you guys can say, you know, actually, I do let her get the cookies, just so you know, but I'm going to back you up and support you in this moment. And it's hard, but he doesn't get to be there for the day-to-day. And so that was an opportunity that you were trying to assert your parental control. And she was like, you know, well, mom lets me, you know, and
exactly what she was like. And she picked up the cookie and she bit it right in front of me too.
Of course
she
she
was
did.
Like, mom lets me. And I was like, get out of here.
We have the same daughter. Sounds like we have the same daughter. Yes.
Oh, so 100%. So, I guess the suggestion from you, so from a parent that's busy and not there probably half the time, not the primary parent, as you say, the suggestion is let the parenting take place. And if there's a difference, don't show the difference publicly in front of your kids.
If you can help it.
Show the difference privately behind closed doors.
Because you want the kids to see you as a united front. And that even though dad, or sometimes it's mom who's not there 100% of the time, that no matter what, you're still a team. And you want the other parent to feel encouraged as well as supported to be able to parent as well. And it's going to be times that you don't agree. You know, he's going to want to punish them for something that you wouldn't have, and vice versa. But that's where you have to kind of bite your tongue and let it happen. And then later on say, you know, I think you might have, you know, punished a little too harshly. Like, this is what I would have done. And if there's a way to kind of take it back, you know, you do. But most of the time you have to kind of, you know, with kids, you have to kind of like, this is what happened. So this is what we're going to do, even if you don't agree with it. Because it's important that both of you get to parent when there's opportunities for it. And in the long run, it'll make it your job a little easier, because you won't feel like you have to always be the bad guy. You can allow him to sometimes step in and also make some of those harder decisions and choices.
Do parents always have to agree?
No. I mean, in an ideal world, yes. But you're two different people and you were raised differently. And so you're going to have different opinions. But what I always say, again, we can't go back. So in an ideal world, you would have had a conversation about parenting and your parenting styles and how you felt about corporal punishment and how you felt about timeout and how you felt about all these things. Some couples do that, some don't, and they kind of learn on the fly and they do it as they go. And sometimes you won't know how you feel about something until you're in a situation. And because your children are different, you may even parent them differently, And so I think it's important to be able to understand where your partner's coming from and acknowledge and recognize that this may be how they want to do a certain thing, but there might be a compromise where someone has to say, you know what, I'm going to defer to you in this situation because, you are there in the day-to-day and maybe a little bit, but this is what I feel. And then you'd say, okay, I'm going to take that and, take it under advisement and see. But no, you're not always going to agree. That's not realistic.
So one of the things I admire most about my producers is they work together every single day and they're married. And they do that so well. Like, they're so good at it. Like, I seriously admire their ability to communicate with one another, business. I've seen them parent in the middle of the day. Like, I've taken so much from their relationship that they don't even know and tried to apply it to mine, because my wife and I kind of within the last 6 to 8 months, for all the businesses that we've started, she's always been there and has stepped in when she needs to step in. And she also wants to be included because she wants to feel like she's doing something in the business. But how do you maintain a healthy relationship when you work with your spouse? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, I think it's, really, again, being able to wear those different hats. And, it's the same when you coach your kids' sports team. I'm your coach right now. I'm not your dad, and so really setting that boundary, that word again, and having that communication and being able to say, hey, when we're at work, we're partners, business partners. And so if we have a disagreement or something, happened at home, we can't really carry that into our work day. That's something that we need to either try to figure out before we get into our work day or we deal with it later.
Are you allowed to get intimate at work?
Well, it's probably
I don't think we have HR, so it's fine.
I mean, you do you.
There's a couch. I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, I think it's just, there's a time and a place. And I think, when you're at work, just kind of trying to be professional. And it's hard because I work with my husband too. My husband's an attorney and I work in his law firm a few days a week in addition to my private practice. So I'm having to wear multiple hats as well because I might be just getting out of a session with a patient and then now I have to go do payroll or, and.
Ooh, question. Yes, I love this. So if you're doing payroll or whatever, what is the best way for him to ask you to get something done or to do something? How would you want to be asked? So let's just say like a task needs to be accomplished or a task, as whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is. And probably the same thing for her. Like something needs to be like, you got to do this. Like she's harping on me always about getting the taxes done and doing this, whatever. Like, what is the best way to ask your partner? Because I don't think it's the same as asking anybody else you work with. I am pretty certain it's not the same.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
Well, I always say a lot of times with couples, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And I think sometimes when you're talking with someone you're more comfortable with, you don't use your manners as much, or you choose your words as carefully. If you're talking to a coworker or an employee, you're going to ask for something a certain way than you would with your spouse or your partner. So just kind of like trying to use those same ways that you would anyone else of just, hey, it looks like you're in the middle of something. I know you're busy, but I just wanted to remind you that, we also needed to make sure that tax bill got paid. And I know it's probably on your to-do list, but just want to remind you.
Will that work?
Yeah. I think I would be asking you that, but
Oh my gosh.
I think we both struggle with that. I think we both like ask stuff of each other, and I think we both can be dismissive.
Mm.
I think what's important to him is not necessarily like on my top priority, and I think vice versa. I think I ask you of things and you don't necessarily
Mm.
treat them with the importance that I would hope you would. It falls on both of our shoulders. I can take responsibility for that for sure.
I mean, I think sometimes it's important to also check in with your partner is like, hey, is now a good time for me to follow up with you about a couple of things? Because sometimes if you're in the middle of a task and you're working with your spouse and they're coming in and, you're kind of, in the middle of something and you can't shift your mind right at that moment. And so making sure of just doing that quick check in of like, is now a good time? And they're like, yes. And then they can mentally make that shift to connect with you on whatever it is versus them just coming in and saying, hey, don't forget to do the payroll and pay this and do this and do that. And you're just like,
Oh, you're not supposed to do it that way?
no.
That's like I'm like
It's like, wait a second, am I talking?
I'm gonna add like 2 weeks on to getting this done.
So, Dr. Johnson-Nguyen, you've been extraordinarily helpful giving your advice to individuals that are watching, not just us. And we really, really appreciate it. Like, honestly, like there are several things that I've learned that I will apply moving forward. Dorey, is there anything specifically that you heard that you really, really liked?
My biggest takeaway is I think like we both have to kind of relinquish some of that control on our ends, I guess, and let the other one, have some space
Mhm.
and maybe be a little more emotional with each other. I like the list of like writing a couple things during your day that you can share.
That was a good idea. That was a good
That's
idea.
really good.
So, as a professional and what you do every day in your practice, like if there are 3 pieces of advice that you had to give someone like my wife and someone like me,
Mhm.
what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
To remember to communicate. Clear, calm, concise communication. It doesn't have to be long drawn out. It's just clearly, calmly, concisely, whatever it is that you need to communicate to your partner. Giving each other lots of grace and space. You're human. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make missteps. But if you see your partner trying and attempting to be better at communicating or better at setting boundaries, acknowledge it, recognize it. Because if you want that behavior to continue, you need to reinforce it. Because I hear a lot of times couples are like, well, I did what you told me to do. And, they didn't notice. And they really did notice, but it wasn't quite perfect or it wasn't. So they didn't give that grace to be able to grow. So those are like the big ones, as well as, being okay with setting boundaries. You kind of mentioned that. But also like, remember, have fun. It's like just because you're parents and you're, a doctor and busy and, you still love each other, you still like each other. So trying to find ways just to have fun with each other. And I think sometimes couples forget that they're allowed to have fun too. Date nights are great, but they're not always realistic. So just trying to find whatever pocket of time works for you. Could just be meeting for coffee or having lunch together once a week. Finding just ways to connect with each other.
We actually have been doing that. It's kind of like innate. We'll go to lunch like Mondays and Tuesdays.
Mhm.
Yeah.
See, you're already up.
Yeah.
Got a couple points.
As a pulmonary critical care physician, like everybody in the world needs help. Physicians need help. I need help. And it's very nice to be able to sit with a psychologist, somebody who is professional, who understands the type of communication necessary to have a successful relationship. And I would be lying to you all if I said this didn't help me. So that's the positive pulse, is even if you are a physician, a super successful person, an attorney, any other type of person that you would consider to be extremely successful, you have to remain with open ears. You have to listen to individuals, and you have to understand what they're saying so you can apply it to make your relationship better and to grow your relationship moving forward in your life. You've got children you're setting examples for, and you want your children to do the same thing. So from a positive pulse perspective, I can't see what's better than applying something like that? So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you again for having me.
Where can we find you?
Good question. You can find me on Psychology Today, which is a network of all therapists in different areas, as well as my website, which is drnicolesaidi.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We appreciate you guys watching The Health Exchange. We're on Instagram at The Health Exchange Podcast. Really appreciate you guys being here. We see you every Thursday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. We're going to see you next Thursday. Thanks again.